मित्रों नमस्कार। जनसुलभ पुस्तकालय के इस कार्यक्रम में आप सभी का हार्दिक स्वागत है। आप जानते हैं कि इन दिनों हम मुकुंद लाठ जी पर कार्यक्रम कर रहे हैं और उसकी 8वीं कड़ी में आज हमारे साथ डेनियल रावे हैं, सीधे इजराइल से। आप जानते हैं डेनियल रावे इजराइल में तेल अवीव विश्वविद्यालय में दर्शन शास्त्र के प्रोफेसर हैं और भारतीय दर्शन पर और तुलनात्मक दर्शन पर इनका काफी काम है। ये लगातार भारत आते रहे हैं और जेएनयू में भी वहां की विजिटिंग फैकल्टी रहे हैं। जो आज का समकालीन दर्शन शास्त्र का परिदृश्य है वैश्विक स्तर पर, उसमें डेनियल रावे की अपनी एक खास जगह है। ऐसे में मुकुंद लाठ जी के लेखन और उनकी दार्शनिक दृष्टि पर डेनियल जी को सुनना एक सुखद अनुभव होगा। इन्होंने दया कृष्ण पर भी काफी काम किया है। दया कृष्ण एंड 20th सेंचुरी इंडियन फिलॉसफी नाम से इनकी किताब है और इसी तरह योग सूत्र पर इनका एक महत्वपूर्ण काम है, एक्सप्लोरिंग द योग सूत्र फिलॉसफी एंड ट्रांसलेशन। इसी तरह सूत्राज, स्टोरीज एंड योगा फिलॉसफी, नरेटिव्स एंड ट्रांसफिगरेशन इनकी एक तीसरी पुस्तक है। मित्रों, ये लगातार भारत से और दर्शन से और जो भी दार्शनिक विरासत है उसका जो पर्सपेक्टिव हो सकता है उसे कई कई कोणों से देखते आए हैं। ए रघुराम राजू की किताब रामचंद्र गांधी टॉक्स एंड राइटिंग्स, इस पुस्तक का की जो प्रस्तावना है, जो फोरवर्ड है, वह भी डेनियल जी ने लिखा है। हम जानते हैं कि डेनियल रावे जब भी इन्हें समय मिलता है भारत आते हैं और तमाम यहाँ के दार्शनिकों के साथ विचार विमर्श करते हैं। यहाँ के विश्वविद्यालय में विजिटिंग फैकल्टी हैं, जेएनयू में खास तौर से, और मुकुंद लाठ जी के साथ इनका एक लंबा साहचर्य रहा है। इनका पर्चा अंग्रेजी में है, हम उसे सुनेंगे और उसका लाभ लेंगे, मगर उसके पूर्व मैं डेनियल जी से निवेदन करूंगा कि वे कुछ हिंदी में बात करें मुकुंद लाठ जी को लेकर और पूरे जनसुलभ पुस्तकालय की ओर से और अपने देश भारत की ओर से। डेनियल जी, मैं आपका हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं और हमें प्रसन्नता है कि आप आज हमारे साथ हैं। तो सर्वप्रथम डेनियल जी, मैं आपसे यह निवेदन करता हूं कि मुकुंद लाठ जी से संबंधित कुछ एक बातचीत हम लोग करें, तदुपरांत आपके टॉक पर आएंगे। डेनियल जी।
अच्छा, थैंक यू, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, सबको नमस्कार। मेरा नाम डेनियल, जैसे अर्पण जी ने कहा, और 2007 से मुकुंद जी के साथ काम किया, मुकुंद जी के साथ पढ़ाई किया। मेरा मेन टीचर था, मेरा गुरु था, मेरा मित्र भी था। तो इसलिए अर्पण जी और अंबिका दास जी मेरा को बुलाया, तो बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद इस इनविटेशन के लिए। मैं कुछ लिखा अंग्रेजी में, तो एक सिंगल टॉक अंग्रेजी में, with your permission। 7-8 पेज मैंने लिखा, चिंता मत। तो let's start।
Yes, indeed।
Thank you। So during Kamal talk a few days ago, I have to say in the beginning that almost every day I came to listen to the different talks on Mukunji. You know, I thought that I know him very well, but every day something new, every day a new dimension was revealed before me. So during Kamal Nayanji's talk, one of the listeners, Pinky Cole, wrote in the chat box, she wrote, "Apni bhasha Hindi ko sunke, kitna sukun milta hai." So I hope that even though my talk is in English today, this evening, you will be able to find some sukun in what I'm going to say. So as I said, my name is Daniel Rove. I'm talking to you from Tel Aviv. You probably know that in Israel we speak Hebrew, Israel Bhasha. We teach and learn and read and write and everything in Hebrew, a language that was dead, that is used merely for Jewish, for Yahudi, ritual purposes for 2 millennia, until 100 years ago, more or less. When a madman, in the best sense of the word, decided to revive it, and against all odds, it worked for him and for us. His name was Eliezer ben Yehuda. Since then, we live in Hebrew, think and dream in Hebrew. So this evening, you and I are meeting in language, in English, which is neither my mother tongue nor yours. In 1999, I came to Jaipur to write my PhD on the philosophy of Shankara Acharya under the guidance of Professor Daya Krishna. He was one of my two supervisors. The other was Professor Shlomo Biderman, a wonderful Israeli scholar. And there, with Dayaji, I met Mukundji. Ambi Kadat explained in his talk before you also a few days ago. He explained that Daya Krishna and Mukund Lart are inseparable philosophically. Kamal Nayan in his talk explained that his father, Yeshdev Shalia and Mukund, are inseparable philosophically. They are both right. This was the Jaipur experiment, an intellectual circle that had a substantial impact on philosophy in India, Indian philosophy, in the 1980s, 1990s, and shortly after the turn of the millennium. This is the Un-Milan movement, which gave rise to the Un-Milan Journal, a singular journal of philosophy in Hindi. Mukundji and Shalaji, brothers in arms, contributed immensely to the establishment of modern Hindi as a language of philosophizing. Not Sanskrit, not English, but Hindi, and parallelly, other modern Indian languages. They were the founding editors and ardent contributors to the journal for many years. The journal is vibrant even today under the editorship of Ambi Kadat Sharma. The Jaipur experiment and the Un-Milan movement, 2 in 1, was a collective of thinkers constantly engaged in a dialogue with one another, with other thinkers in India and abroad, with novelists, poets, artists, attempting to create something new in philosophy. Actually, I'm going to talk to you about Mukundji, the philosopher. So they tried to create something new in philosophy. They wanted to ask new questions, not to repeat, as usual, the same old. By and large, we are speaking of rereading classical Indian sources in dialogue with other materials, especially Western philosophy. I will shortly say something on Mukundji and Aristotle, but for his generation in India, from K.C. Bhattacharya to Mukund Lart, Western philosophy or European philosophy was primarily the writings of Immanuel Kant. Shah Sahab and Shel Mayaram spoke in this series on Mukundji the classicist, the Sanskritist, the translator. In his collaboration with Daya Krishna, especially in the Samvad project, Mukundji was certainly the voice of the tradition. But he was not a voice of a certain school of thought, but an independent voice, a pandit if you wish, but in his own way. I wish to say 3 more things as part of this introduction. First, I wish to highlight the fact that Mukundji was a thinker with a clear political statement, or post-colonial statement, if you wish. What is Indian about contemporary Indian philosophy? What is Indian about contemporary Indian philosophy? Some would say moksha, or moksha centrism. That is a metaphysical spiritual horizon. Daya Krishna dedicated most of his writing life to refute this position. Others would suggest that it is correspondence with classical Indian sources, which makes contemporary Indian philosophy Indian. Others again would speak of engagement with caste and casteism, namely with the social situation in India. Mukunji's answer to the question, what is Indian about contemporary Indian philosophy, was sound and clear: language. This is why he wrote, why he chose to write, at least from a certain point in his writing life, primarily in Hindi. Friends often asked him to write in English, and then he would translate something that he wrote in Hindi, or half translate and half continue to think on the topic. This is the case with two of the papers that I wish to say something about as we move on. Identity Through Necessary Change, a paper published in 2003 and again in 2018, and Thinking as Music, Music as Thinking. This is also the title that I gave for this talk from 2016. The first was written for Dayag's JICPR, Journal of the Indian Council of Philosophical Research. The second for an anthology edited by Arindam Chakrabarti, the Bloomsbury Research Handbook of Indian Aesthetics and Philosophy of Art. Second, the website. I wish to call your attention to a website called Daya Krishna, the Open Library. It's www.dayakrishna in one word.org, or just type Daya Krishna in Google, and probably it will open Wikipedia first, and secondly, the Open Library. In the Open Library, there is a section, there is a rubric called Interlocutors. And in the Interlocutors section, there are few of Mukunji's writings. For example, in the Interlocutors section, you will find Mukunji's book from 2004, Dharma Sankat, Moral Dilemmas, a book which Arpanji deserves a discussion of its own. It is a collection of papers on the scale between ethics and aesthetics, with a beautiful subtitle. The subtitle of the book is Kim Karma, Kim Akarmeti, Kavayopya Tra Mohita. What is action? Kim Karma. What is inaction? Kim Akarmeti. Even the poets, Kavayopya Tra, are puzzled. Mohita. This is the first line of Bhagavad Gita 4.16. In the next line, Krishna begins to articulate an answer to these core questions. What is action? What is inaction? But Mukunji, like Daya Krishna, Yashdev Shalya, Rajendra Swarup Bhatnagar, and other members of the Jaipur experiment, is more interested in questions than answers. We are usually taught to value the answer. They turn the tables, claiming that questions are eternal, answers tentative. It is interesting to notice that for Mukunji, in the subtitle of his book, it is the poet, not the philosopher or the scientist, or even God, after all, we're talking about the Bhagavad Gita, who is the most qualified not to answer the questions raised in verse 416, or for that matter, any other question at the heart of the human situation, but to articulate their unanswerability in a meaningful way. And finally, on a more personal note, Mukunji was one of the most gentle people I ever met. But at the same time, he was a demanding teacher, very demanding teacher. Often he would present an argument before me and ask me to raise a good objection. This is the role of the student, to object, to disagree, to find a voice of his own. If I failed to raise a valid objection that would force him to rethink the argument, to reshape his position, he would shout impatiently, since he already thought of a few objections to his own position. So he used to shout, Socho! I can still hear his voice today, every day in Tel Aviv or wherever I am, telling me, reminding me, urging me, Socho, think. Now, finally, I'm reaching to philosophy. Let's visit together three of Mukunji's essays. I can't see you, so I hope that you manage to follow me. So first, I promised to say something about Mukunji and Aristotle. Interestingly, the word levaker in Hebrew means both to visit and to criticize. Levaker means to visit and to criticize. This is exactly what Mukunji did. He critically visited the writings of Aristotle. The context was his attempt to refute the myth about the rational West, the so-called rational West, versus, again, the so-called spiritual India, which prevails even today, even in India. Rationality is supposed to be the feature that distinguishes the West from other cultures. It is rationality, Mukunji suggests, which grants the West, in Western eyes, of course, a sense of superiority over the other, which in Western eyes, again, is seen as irrational, or at least not as rational. In his paper, Aristotle and the Roots of Western Rationality from 1992, which was actually presented in an East-West conference in Mount Abu, Mukunji looks into Aristotle's works, the Nicomachean Ethics and Politics, to decipher the background of Aristotle's famous maxim, man is a rational animal, and to reveal the connection between the rational and the political in the major guru of Western rational thought, as he cynically puts it, the major guru of Western rationality, Aristotle. In Aristotle's Politics, Mukunji finds a discussion of what he refers to as two basic pairs among humans, in which the one is incapable of existing without the other, namely man-woman and master-slave. To what extent did Aristotle's master-slave narrative, the former endowed with intelligence, the latter characterized by physical strength, Mukunji discovers, contribute, justify, and give a tailwind to colonialism from Alexander of Macedonia, Aristotle's alleged student, until today. Besides the roots of rationality and of colonialism, it is interesting to see that Mukunji does not hesitate to travel intellectually all the way to Greece and to read Aristotle's writings firsthand, even if in English translation. It is, of course, an invitation for anyone rooted in Western philosophy to make a similar visit to classical Indian texts. The second paper of Mukunji that I want to revisit with you is a paper called Identity Through Necessary Change. Identity through necessary change. Identity, Mukunji writes in this paper, is usually understood as something which remains the same despite change. Something which remains the same despite change. His attempt is to explore an alternative to this convention. There are identities, he continues to write, where difference is not contingent but necessary to identity. Identity in such cases is formed and maintained through a process of change. This identity does not only accommodate, but also invite change and plurality. Mukunji's case study in his inquiry into identity through necessary change is, as usual, his usual classical Indian music, raga music, rag music, if you wish. The raga pattern, Mukunji explains, is given and forms the basis for a free and open alapa, or alap, if you prefer. An improvised elaboration according to a set of rules which assume the pattern but allow room for imagination. Identity in a rag cannot be restricted to a given pattern or even rules, since a good alap reweaves them in its own way, and the great alap can even transform them, the rules. But what is identity through, not despite, change? How can it be thought of meaningfully if the usual overtones which accompany the notion of identity imply the very opposite? Or to put it differently, if pattern and rules do not determine the identity of a rag, what does? To be true to a rag, Mukunji provides us with the clue, is to be true to its bhava or bhau. Raga bhava is the term in use for the felt identity of a rag, the felt identity of a rag. A rag without raga bhava, without rag bhau, is believed to be only the shadow of a rag. Rag bhau may be said to be the inner identity of the rag, an identity sought and created by musicians through alap. This is why it has plural possibilities, since different musicians seek the bhau of a rag in different ways. And this connects in a way to the talk that we all listened to yesterday. Mukunji's formulation of identity through necessary change is new and creative, since it challenges the convention of identity as overcoming change. His case study, Raga music, is unique, but most interesting are the consequences of his thought experiment. Is our identity, the identity of each of us, different from the identity of a rag? Can we think of our own identity as created by change? Can we stop treating change as a threat? Can we accommodate the plural possibilities that Mukunji speaks of with reference to our identity, to my identity? Now I'm coming to the third paper of Mukunji that I want to very shortly discuss with you. I wrote, finally, I wish to say a few words on Mukunji's paper, Thoughts on Swara and Rasa, Music as Thinking, Thinking as Music. Here he makes an attempt to interlace the two disciplines in which he was immersed throughout his life, music and philosophy. It might seem odd, Mukunji opens his discussion, if not perversely counterintuitive, even to think of relating, let alone equating music to thought. For this assumes a close kinship that seems to be entirely absent. At first glance, music and thinking seem totally different from one another. Music is bhoga, Mukunji explains, namely pleasure, including sensual pleasure. As such, it engulfs us in immersion akin to self-forgetfulness. Thinking, on the other hand, takes us in the direction of reflexive self-awareness. It is a matter of memory and recollection, not forgetfulness and absorption like music. Thinking, Mukunji continues to sketch his thinking music picture, demands a distance, like photography, I would add. The right distance allows us to see clearly that which our thought focuses on. Music, on the other hand, Mukunji suggests, can be readily and meaningfully associated with lovemaking and even death. It can go with states of feeling, even in its sublimity, with a reflective and meditative mood, but not with discursive thought, unquote. Lovemaking and death are Mukunji's illustrations of totality, of zero distance. His remark on meditative mood is interesting. Music is meditative both in the religious or spiritual sense of the word and in the sense of deep thinking or reflection. Depth in music and thinking, and here finally the parallels meet. Depth in music and thinking is a matter of abstraction. Abstraction, Mukunji suggests, is the common denominator between music, which for him is raga music, and thinking. This is most evident, he observes, in contemplating a raga, in singing it, playing it, or even in listening to it. Musician and appreciator or listener alike share the experience of music and its depth of abstraction. But paradoxically, Mukunji further observes, it is here, in the experience of sheer abstraction, which music facilitates, that we can also realize how different music is from thinking. This is the case since the abstraction of music is different from the abstraction of thinking. The former is abstraction within the realm of emotion. The latter is conceptual abstraction without any trace of emotion. Music and thinking, Mukunji suggests, are two distinct languages. One of the features of thinking is that since it takes the form of words and sentences, it is essentially translatable. On the other hand, music, which is language in a metaphorical sense, is untranslatable. This untranslatability, at least in the technical linear sense of translation, which applies to words and sentences, is one of its essential characteristics. However, Mukunji makes a distinction between translatability and meaning. Music is untranslatable, but meaningful. To decipher this meaning, he employs the concepts of Abhidha and Vyanjana. Each standing for a different type of meaning. He explains, and I'm quoting him again. Abhidha is denotative, indicative meaning, and Vyanjana may be characterized as evocative. And he continues to explain that there are languages that have no Abhidha, only Vyanjana. Music, he writes, is one such language. Vyanjana makes music and poetry what they are. Language consists of both the denotative and the evocative, Abhidha and Vyanjana. But we rarely listen to its Vyanjana aspect, to the music of language. We usually work with its practical Abhidha aspect. And I wrote in brackets, Wittgenstein's builder's language comes to mind. Still in music as thinking, thinking as music, Mukunji draws on Anandavardhana, the 9th century thinker, and argues that, again I'm quoting, the significance of Vyanjana lies in a meaning that is addressed not to our intellect, but to our emotive, felt consciousness. He implies that the evocative meaning of a text, including a raga as a text, bypasses the thinking faculty and reaches the above-mentioned felt consciousness, the emotive compartment of our consciousness. Vyanjana, Anandavardhana felt and argued, Mukunji writes, and his articulation is interesting. Mukunji's articulations are always interesting. He writes, Anandavardhana felt and argued. And basically, he's emphasizing the feeling element and portrays Anandavardhana both as theorist and practitioner. Theorist in the sense that he's the famous author of the famous Dvani Aloka, who argues, and at the same time, he's a poet, right? Author of the Devi Shataka, who feels. So Vyanjana, Mukunji writes, Anandavardhana felt and argued, Anandavardhana, the theorist and the poet, is as inherent and natural a function or power of language as Abhidha. Typically, language in Vyanjana can move out of the rational or denotative logic of Abhidha and deliberately distort it for its own purposes. From an Abhidha point of view, Vyanjana is a matter of distortion. But we can think, Mukunji the classicist would not approve of this illustration, we can think, I'm suggesting, of distortion of an electric guitar distortion that simultaneously disrupts the sound of classical guitar and creates a new sound, warm, dirty, quote unquote, dirty, quote unquote, fuzzy, that has come to define rock and roll. It is distortion in the most creative sense of the word. Last page. I could have continued to travel with you in Mukunji's paper, paragraph after paragraph and page after page. But our time is limited, especially since I was so late. Therefore, I'm skipping to his bottom line. Mukunji speaks, we saw, about abstraction in the realms of pure intellect and pure feeling or pure emotion, which are both part of who we are. Yes, we are back with identity, who each of us is. The idea of meaning intended for our emotive, felt consciousness is intriguing. It sounds like, quote unquote, knowledge in the realm of feelings, in the realm of emotion. The word knowledge here is, of course, a lakshana, a metaphor, since we are not dealing with the mental faculty. Mukunji elucidates in the very final sentence of his paper. Music, he writes, if it looks at itself in the mirror of thought, can perhaps aim at being more self-consciously thought-like. Music, if it looks at itself at the mirror of thought, can perhaps aim at being more self-consciously thought-like. In the mirror of thought, then, music becomes more thought-like or noetic in the emotive sense that Mukunji tries to articulate. But what happens when thought looks at itself in the mirror of music? We're talking about a dialogue here, right? Between thinking and music. So what happens when thought looks at itself in the mirror of music? I would suggest, Mukunji ends the paper before answering this question, which I also love because he allows his readers to think for themselves, to write, to author the article together with him. So I would finally take the invitation and suggest, take the invitation to write the bottom line myself. I would suggest that first it can become aware, thought can become aware of its own limitations. Abidha without a touch of Vyanjana is like kana without masala, food which does not excite the palate. Or if you wish, it is shushkatarka, dry reasoning. Mukunji calls attention to the experiential dimension that Vyanjana brings to the table. And remember that raga music is Shir Vyanjana. An experience of self which is not, I wrote, which is not, Mr. Descartes, just I think. Mukunji tries or strives to extend the borders, the borderlines of the self which is not just I think. Music, but Mukund and music are close words, at least for me in English. Music, Mukund, music has the capacity to reveal our emotive felt consciousness. Is a phrase, often hidden behind or between the lines of our thinking consciousness. And second, in the mirror of music, thinking can perhaps overcome the fantasy of one truth, and open a multifaceted horizon for itself. Since, and this is my last quote for this evening, since swara, sound, or if you wish, music, is essentially a seeker of anekanta, of plurality, as Mukunji explains. Okay, this is what I prepared for you. Arpanji.
Thank you, Professor Daniel Raveji, for delivering such a well-expressed speech. और मुझे लगता है कि हमारे सभी साथियों को आपका यह वक्तव्य पसंद आया होगा और जिस तरह से आपने म्यूजिक एज थिंकिंग थिंकिंग एज म्यूजिक पर चर्चा की और मुकुंद लाठ जी के कुछ संदर्भों के साथ अपने इस वक्तव्य को रखा, हम सभी के लिए यह लाभकारी रहा होगा, हम ऐसी उम्मीद करते हैं। और कुछ एक प्रतिक्रियाएं भी आई हैं, मैं उन्हें भी यहां ले लेता हूं। सम आर इन हिंदी एंड सम आर इन इंग्लिश, दोनों को ले लेते हैं। मगर डैनियल जी, आप हिंदी भी अच्छी बोलते हैं, तो क्या कुछ उनसे जुड़े कुछ
अब थोड़ा डिसअपॉइंट हो गया क्योंकि मैं अंग्रेजी में कुछ लिखा।
नहीं
अंग्रेजी में या हिंदी में मुकुंद जी हमेशा बताया मेरे को, आप बढ़िया काम करो, कोई भाषा में बढ़िया काम करना चाहिए। So
बिल्कुल
we're
बिल्कुल।
talking about a multilingual dialogue.
नहीं,
Yes.
बहुत अच्छा किया आपने। और वी वर प्रिपेयर्ड फॉर दिस कि यू विल डिलीवर योर लेक्चर इन इंग्लिश, लेकिन हमारे कई साथी यहाँ हिंदी के भी हैं, तो उनके लिए, क्योंकि आपकी हिंदी भी बहुत प्यारी है, बहुत अच्छी है, तो कुछ संस्मरण जो है मुकुंद लाठ जी से जुड़े कई संस्मरण भी आपके पास है। मैं जानता हूं कि दार्शनिक लोग जो फिलोसफर्स हैं, दे डोंट बिलीव इन शेयरिंग देयर मेमोयर्स, बट समहाउ कुछ अगर आप कह सकें, कुछ ऐसी बातचीत कर सकें जो आपको, कुछ चीजें जो उनकी याद रह गई हैं, जो आपको अट्रैक्ट करती हैं अबाउट मुकुंद लाठ, तो डेट विल बी बेटर। कुछ ऐसी बातचीत हमसे शेयर करें डेनियल।
Yes. So I think that I tried to say something about it in my introduction, and I think that many of you who knew Mukunji will agree with me that Mukunji's mind was a questioning mind. Mukunji would not say A, B, C. He would try to explore. He would try to find out very gently. He would travel between questions. Very gently, he would travel between texts. Very gently, he would travel between philosophical positions. And I think that this questioning atmosphere, this questioning tone, at least for me, was the main attraction. Because too often we meet people that they tell us, they preach to us, they talk at us. And Mukunji was always trying to create a dialogue, always trying to open a new angle, always trying to open a new dimension. And as I also suggested in the beginning, since he was so broad in his education, he could make interesting connections between different disciplines. And I think Arpanji, that this is why this series is so interesting. Every day, someone speaks of Mukund from a different direction. So we heard of music. We heard of music. We heard of Mukund from the second time that I'm mistaking the words Mukund and music. So we heard of Mukunji from the music dimension. We heard of Mukunji from other arts dimension. Kamal Nayanji spoke to us about Mukunji, the historian, right? Mukunji, the theorist of history. Ami Kadat, like me, or better than me, spoke about Mukunji, the philosopher. And I think that this broad picture, such a broad picture, today, in the academia, today in the university, we are expected to focus on one thing. We have to be expert of one specific point. And I think that the beauty about Mukund was that his picture was so wide. It's like in photography, zoom lens and wide lens. Today, the zoom lens is so popular. People forgot about the wide lens, and I think that Mukunji is an example of the widest lens that we can think about. I had the privilege to spend literally thousands of hours with him. And every time I came to him, every time we spoke, I learned something new. There must be some jadoo if you come again and again and discuss and think and you know, I mean, this is what we call inspiration. For me, it was an inspiration. Whenever I came, he was asking, "What are you writing?" Expecting me to be writing something. So since I could not tell him that I'm not writing anything, I had to write something. He would tell me, "What are you thinking about?" And since I couldn't say that I'm not thinking about anything in particular, I had to, in a way, to always be thinking about something. So this was the education, if you want to call it the education. This was the treatment. This was this was the way of life that I learned from him. Always when anyone used to come to Mukunji, he was busy with reading. He was busy with singing. He was busy with the drawing. But one more thing I will say, I don't want to depict Mukund, as a saint. Vo santa adminita, vo insanta. You know that Mukunji's guru, Mukunji's philosophy guru in his childhood was Shel Mayara mentioned it in her talk. Was a famous philosopher or actually he called himself Sri Anirvan. I don't know if you know the writings of Sri Anirvan. Sri Anirvan became famous as the translator to Bangla of Sri Aurobindo's The Life Divine. But think of the name, Sri Anirvan, the one who is not interested in Nirvana. In Nirvana, he didn't want Nirvana. He wanted to remain in the world. He wanted to do something, to transform the world. And I think that the two philosophical fields that Mukunji worked in or worked between or connected, ethics and aesthetics, are both fields that are connected to this world, not to... I was listening to Shah Sahab, who of course knew him much better than me and for so many years more than me. So Shah Sahab was talking about the realms beyond. Shah Sahab was talking about the unworldliness of Mukunji. But besides this open horizon, if you want to call it like this, the open horizon to a beyond, Mukunji was very much following the steps of his guru, of Sri Anirvan, and was very much rooted in the world. And I think that this is also something that I took from him, because the world is also important. Not the world is also important. The world is most important in the world. And then I could share with you many memories of going together, attending together classical music performances. In his last year, Pandit Jasraj, you know that Mukunji was a Shishya of Pandit Jasraj, of his elder brother Pandit Mani Ram. So we went together to a program, to a concert by Jasraji at the Govind Devji Mandir in Jaipur. Yes. So this was an outstanding experience. Not only listening to Jasraji at the Govind Devji Mandir, but to be with Mukunji and to listen to his observations. I remember that I went with Mukunji to the City Palace in Jaipur. He was invited by the current queen of Jaipur for a meeting or something. So we came before time because Mukunji wanted to show me the different statues in the City Palace, and on each statue he had something to explain. So for me, the fact that he's no longer with us in this world is such a loss. Not only loss in the personal sense, because he was such a gentle and nice person, but also loss of knowledge. I mean, who has this what I call the wide lens? Who knows? Who has the knowledge? Who is the sarvagya? Who has the knowledge in so many areas like Mukunji? So again, I want to thank you for inviting me, and I want to thank you for for creating this beautiful. How many talks so far? 6, 7, 8,
Air.
8 talks. Yeah,
Your lecture is
on the
on air.
on
Yes.
on
And
Mukunji.
some more
So
important lectures are on the card.
on the card, okay. So my contribution was to reveal the philosophical aspect of Mukunji. I mean, he's so famous as a translator. He's so famous as a theorist, as a cultural theorist. He's so famous as a historian. But as you know, I mean, you didn't need me to come and tell you. But as you know, he was a very sharp, he had a very sharp thinking mind. And I tried to give you just a taste, just a few examples through the articles that I said something about. And by the way, I hope that this will encourage the listeners to read Mukunji. Remember the website, Da Krishna, the Open Library. You can just open the Dharma Sankat and see this questioning, this inquiring, getting into an inquiry, this special philosophical tone.
ओके, थैंक यू। धर्म संकट पर प्रोफेसर अंबिका दत्त शर्मा जी ने भी बात की थी कि कैसे वे शंकालु मन के साथ उस पुस्तक में उतरते हैं और कर्म चेतना के आयाम में वे कैसे फिर समाधान की ओर बढ़ते हैं। तो यह एक स्वयं की एक लेखक की या एक दार्शनिक की या एक चिंतक की अपनी एक यात्रा भी है जो क्रमशः आगे बढ़ती है। डेनियल रावेश जी, आप हमारे साथ आए और अपना लेक्चर दिया, उनके साथ की मेमोरीज हमसे साझा की, काफी अच्छा लगा। और जिन कुछ मित्रों की यहाँ प्रतिक्रियाएं हैं मैं उनको ले लूं। सरोजनी कौशिक जी, कमल नयन जी, सत्येंद्र श्रीवास्तव जी, केपी शाह जी, दिगराज शर्मा जी, ये सब जो हैं आपका स्वागत कर रहे हैं। शुक्रिया आप सभी लोगों का। किरण कुमार मोदक जी का एक कमेंट है, क्वेश्चंस आर इटर्नल, इंटरेस्टिंग थीसिस। ये आपकी बातचीत के संदर्भ में उन्होंने अपनी प्रतिक्रिया दी। कमल नयन जी, द अर्लियर स्पीकर, वे लिखते हैं, मुकुंद जी वाज वन ऑफ दोज हु कुड रेज मोस्ट पेनिट्रेटिंग क्वेश्चंस एंड आंसर्ड देम इन हिज ओन पेकुलियर वे। अगर आपको कहीं लगे कि आपको कहीं कुछ इस पर बात रखनी हो, डेनियल जी, तो अपनी बात रखिएगा। मुकुंद जी वाज वन ऑफ दोज हु कुड रेज मोस्ट पेनिट्रेटिंग क्वेश्चंस and answered them in his own peculiar way. It's a comment from Kamal Nayan ji. मीना मखीजा जी स्वागत कर रही हैं। दिगराज शर्मा जी, आपकी जो लेक्चर, आपका जो लेक्चर हुआ उस पर अपनी राय दे रहे हैं। इट वाज अ ब्यूटीफुल इंटरप्रिटेशन ऑफ म्यूजिक एंड थॉट। मित्रों, हमने देखा कि कैसे जब हमारे साथ फिलॉसफी के लोग आए, आज भी हमारे साथ एक दार्शनिक हैं डेनियल रावेश जी फ्रॉम इजराइल, तेल अवीव यूनिवर्सिटी, तो ये भी कैसे उनके दर्शन में म्यूजिक को लेकर आते हैं, थिंकिंग एज म्यूजिक, म्यूजिक एज थिंकिंग। और संगीत के भी कई लोग आए जिन्होंने उनके विभिन्न पक्षों पर, वाद्य संगीत पर और तमाम दूसरे पक्षों पर, राग के इतिहास पर आदि पर बात की। तो दर्शन में संगीत और संस्कृति के साथ मुकुंद जी कैसे बढ़ते हैं, यह अपने आप में उनकी ओर से एक रोचक यात्रा भी है और हमारे समाज को, हमारी संस्कृति को, हमारे थॉट को एक कंट्रीब्यूशन भी है, योगदान भी है। कविता पारुलकर जी लिख रही हैं, डेनियल जी, इट्स अ नोबल वे ऑफ लुकिंग एट म्यूजिक सिंस वी ऑलवेज एसोसिएट म्यूजिक to be a self-abnegation, and this seems quite opposed to the discursive thought. कविता जी, कमल नयन जी की एक और प्रतिक्रिया है, a so simple and so evocative presentation of मुकुंद जी ideas. Thanks Daniel. आपको थैंक कर रहे हैं जी, he is thanking you. इट्स सो सिंपल एंड सो इवोकेटिव प्रेजेंटेशन, काफी आसान रहा, अंग्रेजी भी आपने आसान रखी और हम सभी लोगों को समझ में आई, अच्छा लगा। किरण कुमार मोदक जी की प्रतिक्रिया है, देख लें एक बार स्क्रीन पर। इट सिम्स
Atato Jigyasa, this is the beginning of the Brahma Sutra,
yes,
Atato
yes, yes,
Jigyasa, now for the knowledge.
ओके। और कमल नयन जी की एक और प्रतिक्रिया आ रही है, यू आर राइट, आपके लिए लिख रहे हैं, यू आर राइट डेनियल, मुकुंद जी बाजा मल्टी डायमेंशनल एंड एट ऑन इंटीग्रेटेड पर्सनालिटी। तो इस तरह से कुछ एक प्रतिक्रियाएं थी, जो कुछ हमारे मित्र और लोग जुड़े रहे इस कार्यक्रम में, मैं उनके नाम ले लूं, उर्मिला शर्मा जी, मनोज कुलकर्णी जी, विपिन चौधरी जी, केपी शाह, मंजरी सिन्हा जी, देवेंद्र मोहन, सत्येंद्र श्रीवास्तव, वंदना कुमारी, चतर सिंह जाम और हमारे कई दूसरे साथी जुड़े रहे। तो कुछ और बातचीत करना चाहेंगे डेनियल जी, या हम लोग अब इस कार्यक्रम को समाप्त किया जाए, जैसा कहें?
I think that and thank you to all the remarks, all the comments. And again, thank you to you to be part of this series. And it's good that we remember Mukunji, because Mukunji is not the most famous scholar. He's not the most famous because his personality was quite shy. So it is our task to open his text, to open his knowledge further. So thank you, Arpanji. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel Ravesh ji, for sparing your time with us and accepting our invitation. मित्रों, आप सभी का धन्यवाद। मुकुंद लाट जी पर यह एकाग्र आगे जारी है और हम आगे की कड़ियों में कुछ और महत्वपूर्ण वक्ताओं को सुनेंगे। आप लोगों का स्नेह मिल रहा है, आप सभी का धन्यवाद, शुक्रिया। डेनियल जी, नमस्ते, शुभ रात्रि।
शुभ रात्रि।